I'm giving people advance notice that we are likely to see some very difficult but necessary decisions over the coming days. And ultimately I'm responsible for the decisions the Scottish Government will take, and we will take those decisions on the basis of what we think is right for Scotland. Ideally, we'll be able to have a joined-up approach across the UK, but my responsibility is to take the decisions I think are right for Scotland. And let me be very clear.
Oh, she's been clear, she's been candid, and she's yet again fucking lying.
This is about trying to avoid another full lockdown. It is not a full lockdown I'm talking.
I mean, who are you trying to kid at this point? I'm almost certain, I can't recall 100%, but I'm almost certain that I have said in some of the videos that I've made on this specific so-called virus that it was an inevitability that by winter time we would be in another lockdown. They themselves on the Scottish Government's website have somehow come to some conclusion that we're going to see a bad winter, quote unquote. We are heading towards the autumn. The summer months have now died a death. We are heading towards autumn. Thus, we will head to winter. It's inevitable that, with flu season coming around again, that we will end up with what they consider to be so-called coronavirus cases or COVID-19 cases. This is just the beginning of it. So for her to sit there yet again, or stand there at her podium, her grandstanding performance, pretending that she's been clear, she's been candid, she's doing what's best for Scotland, despite the fact that every fucking decision possible that's been made up to this point has essentially destroyed Scotland, or the economy anyway. But it's fine, because they've got the green, sustainable, fairer solution to come out the other side of it. Go figure, But it's remarkable how she can stand there and talk about, this is about trying to prevent another lockdown. It's just bollocks. That is it. That is all this is. It's bollocks. Because irrespective of whether or not she implements some harsher rules for the time being, we're still going to end up in a lockdown again. That's what's coming. Anyway.
Talking about right now, it's about how we take steps that might involve greater restrictions than those we're under right now, but will allow us to interrupt the increase in transmission and avoid going back into a March-type lockdown, and crucially, will allow us to keep our schools open. So that's the basis on which we're considering these issues right now, and the basis on which we'll take decisions over the next few days.
So it says here that Nicola Thinlips has warned Scots and new Scots alike to prepare for a circuit break. Lockdown restrictions next week. Warning Scots and new Scots alike to prepare for a swath of new nationwide lockdown restrictions next week as a circuit break to stop the resurgence of the so-called coronavirus. This umbrella term that covers a plethora of things, including the common cold and the flu. Thinlips said hard but necessary decisions may be needed in the coming days to prevent a second lockdown, and the country is at probably the most critical point since the first one was imposed last March. Going on to say she would decide the next steps for Rainbow Unicorn Land over the next weekend, and disclose she had asked the PM to convene a Cobra meeting for a UK-wide discussion. Both Thinlips and Bojo are considering a circuit breaker plan, which would see curfews and restrictions on activities for at least a fortnight, and probably longer. You see, because it's not going to be a fortnight. Let's go way back in the Wayback Machine to when they said a couple of weeks to flatten the curve, right? That turned into 3-4 fucking months. And then after the fact, instead of letting us go back to normal, oh no, that's prohibited. We had to then adhere to new bogus rules throughout the duration of the warmer months, the summer and whatnot, muzzling us, etc., etc. And all of a sudden it became more about cases than it did about deaths. The same deaths, funnily enough, that they were flubbing all throughout the peak of so-called COVID-19, probably longer, aka indefinite until the next lockdown. Anyway, although not as draconian as a full lockdown, that's alright then. That's alright. It's not as draconian as another lockdown, but it's still kind of. Glad the Telegraph is telling it how it is. It is hoped the move would have a sharp impact on breaking the chain of transmission and stopping the recent surge in cases. Oops, what have I done now? Pubs and restaurants could be ordered to close altogether or have their hours severely restricted, but schools would remain open. Shops, and here we go again, non-essential workplaces may also be forced to close again. Speaking at her daily briefing, Thin Lips said, whether you call it a circuit breaker or a fire breaker, that is the kind of thing that I think we're all thinking about just now. I mean, RBI. Nobody ever mentions Sweden, and this is what I find remarkable. I mean, I'm under no illusion that the news, quote unquote, isn't really the news anymore. I mean, I don't know when it stopped becoming said news. Was it ever really the news? But the point remains the same. It's now just literally a propaganda piece, or an arm of the government. That's all this is. They never mention Sweden. And this is what I find remarkable. Because Sweden, against all the odds, never imposed any of this bullshit that Thin Lips stands there and grandstands and brags about. Like, oh, we're stopping the virus because of my rules. No, you're not, though. You're fucking not. Sweden destroys this narrative. And it's just remarkable to me that it never gets a mention. Anyway, it then says, or she says even, that all four home nations were facing broadly the same challenge, and argued the key question was, how do we act quickly, early, decisively to stop a deteriorating situation getting worse and instead really push it back or to the right track again? You know, all these cases, thanks to tests, most of which are false positives, and again, it's not been isolated. You're essentially testing people for a fucking coronavirus, which could be anything. Thin Lips also urged Scots and New Scots not to cross the border to visit the northeast of England, where major curbs have already been introduced, and for people from those areas to stay out of Rainbow Unicorn Land. Warning came as she her warning even came as she disclosed 203 more Scottish cases had been recorded in the preceding 24 hours and another death. You know, it's funny because the BBC mentions the same thing here, different sort of wording granted, but it says here that Thin Lips told her daily briefing, this cancerous propaganda piece that is her daily briefing, that there had been 203 positive tests in Rainbow Unicorn Land in the last 24 hours, and that one person who tested positive had died. But it doesn't elaborate. It doesn't tell you whether or not this individual died of said COVID-19, or if he tested or she tested positive for any of the coronaviruses out there and died of something else. No mention of their age, no mention of nothing. No, because one person has tested positive has died. Oh, well, we better shut everything fucking down then. How many people have tested positive via your bogus wee tests and have survived? We don't hear about that. We never do. Now, of course, we don't. Anyway, it then says, Thin Lips even said the proportion of tests coming back positive had risen to 4.4%, just below the World Health Organization's 5% threshold for the virus no longer being under control. I mean, man. It just infuriates me. Listening to this crap, the R number, the same R number that she didn't even know back in March time, April time. I've uploaded the video on my channel. She didn't even know the R number when she was asked about it, but she knows it was too high. Yeah, of course she does. The average number of people each carrier infects is estimated to be above 1 and as high as 1.4 in Scotland. This compared to between 1 and 1.2 across the UK, which relatively few older, more vulnerable people, relatively few older and more vulnerable people have contracted the virus in recent weeks. Thin Lips warned that the picture is also beginning to change. And look at the dates. The 18th of September 2020. We're starting to roll into winter here. You see what's happening here. October, November, December, etc. It's going to bring about said flu season. And but Thin Lips, she's predicting the future. You're fucking not. You're not fooling anyone. Well, you are. You're not fooling me, like. In late June, Thin Lips said Scotland was not far away from eliminating COVID-19, but the number of cases has since surged to the highest level since the start of May, because we're entering the fucking flu season soon enough. And on top of that, you're testing more people, and on top of that, the tests that you are using to test said people they're not worth their weight in salt. And again, I refer back to what I said earlier. What about Sweden? What did Sweden do to eliminate said virus? Sturgeon loves to stand at her podium and pretend that her fucking policies, her economy crippling policies, have saved lives. No, they've not. Because the amount of people that have died in Scottish care homes at the hands of her is fucking unforgivable as far as I'm concerned. And on top of that, Every single thing that she has done, Sweden did the opposite. Anyway, she said Rainbow Unicorn Land is now broadly 4 weeks behind France. What about Sweden, bitch? No, of course not. And urgent action must be taken so we don't end up where they are now, with around 10,000 cases a day and hundreds of people in intensive care. More than 1.75 million people in the west of Scotland are already barred from visiting other households following a spike in cases linked to indoor family gatherings and house parties. You know, it's funny, they keep doing this. It's fucking all the spikes in cases because of people having fun. That's what this is. But you can go to work, you can go to the pub, you can go... It's fucking mental. Oh my god. You can go to the pub and have a couple of swallies, but don't you dare have a house party. Don't you dare have 3 households in the one house. Oh no, no, it has to be 2 now. You know, that rule that came into effect on Monday, but you know, the weekend, people were making the most of it. You know, she gave you notice. But cases, again, cases, not deaths. Cases. No elaboration. No differentiation. Cases. On their bogus tests have continued to increase nationally despite Thin Lips issuing a new edict limiting on gatherings to 6 people. Oh, well, your rules clearly ain't working. Oh, well, look at that. Gatherings to 6 people, excluding the under 12s, because Clyde, the coronavirus, knows to distinguish between a 12 and an 11-year-old. Bear that in mind. And 2 households, because again, you know, if it's such a deadly virus, there shouldn't be anybody from 2 households meeting. But no, Thin Lips has said on many occasions that she's trying to quell the spread of said virus. So she's minimised it to 2 households, but if it's really as deadly as she claims it is, then there shouldn't be anybody meeting from any household. And I know that's the direction of travel we're heading, but for the time being, her conflicting, bogus rules contradict each other. None of it makes sense. I don't understand at this point, or people don't buy into it. Thin Lips also said, first and foremost, we need to act to interrupt that exponential growth. No one wants to see another full-scale lockdown. No, we don't, but you're going to fucking implement it anyway, so just get it over with. Adding, I am today giving the nation advance notice that the coming days are likely to see some hard but necessary decisions. Thin Lips warned that doing almost nothing certainly isn't an option. Well, that's funny because Sweden did almost fucking nothing, and look where they are now, eh? And the good news is we still have time to prevent it, to prevent a second full lockdown. I mean, who are you trying to kid here, like? Who are you trying to kid? Warning this weekend will be critical, she said. Do we need to have more national restrictions? These are the decisions that we will be pondering and trying to come to conclusions on over the next 8 days. I mean, just pull the other one, eh? Asked how long any circuit break measures would have to last, she added, it can take a period of weeks to know whether something you start doing today has an effect. Jason Leach, Scotland's National Clinical Director, also warned that nationwide restrictions must be considered to stop the so-called virus, as we are now beginning to see it is everywhere. The fires are beginning to light. I mean, so much dramatization. Sorry. I'm dying, I've got corona. Around 2 million people in the northeast of England up to the Scottish border, including Newcastle, County Durham and Northumberland, were banned on Thursday from meeting people from outside their households. Restaurants and pubs in the area must be shut by 10 p.m. because for some fucking strange reason, after 10 p.m. you might contract the virus, but before 10 p.m. you'll be fine, you know what I mean? Thin Lips said Scots and New Scots alike should not travel to areas that are under restrictions, and people in the northeast of England shouldn't come to other parts of the UK. Mark Woolhouse, Professor of Infectious Disease Epidemiology at the University of Edinburgh, said an optimistic aim of circuit break restrictions could be to drive down the R number and reduce the incidence of new infections by half for a short period. After 2 weeks, the rate of new cases would be expected to increase again, he warned, but it would take time to return to the levels seen before measures were introduced. Adding, the expectation is that all this will buy several weeks of time, which could be used, for example, to improve the performance of the test, trace and isolate system. Of course! For a fucking so-called deadly virus. So, yeah, just to let you all know that this is coming. Peace.